Hello Sales Nation, I'm Will Barron, host of the Salesman podcast, and in this video, 5 of the world's leading sales and mindset experts share what we need to get right up here to have success in B2B sales.
Well, let me give you a different way of thinking about it, which goes back to the core issue here, which is mindset. It's all in how you look at it. Of course, it's okay, but what a shame. When you think about what you and I could do day to day compared to what we actually do in the course of our lives, what we could do is so much more enormous than what we actually do. Well, that means that all the people that could have been affected, could have been helped by what we could do, will not be helped by it. So it's like if I have the skill and the talent and the disposition to be a nurturing doctor, I could alleviate pain, or I could just go on and be a clerk at the corner store and live an unremarkable life. You say, well, no, you have to get a high education. Yeah, but if you're a nurturer, if you're a healer, you'll know it because you'll be drawn toward that kind of activity. You know, I think it was Einstein said, no problem will be solved at the same level of thinking that created the problem. So you got to get into a different frame of mind to think about it. Let's think for a minute as if you or I are the creator of life on earth, okay? So we are God. We're the universal intelligence, the original source. And we're creating, we decide one day, hey, let's create humans, okay? And let's design humans to be capable of thousands and tens of thousands of things. But let's make it so that each one is especially designed to be particularly good at one path and okay at others, but particularly good at one path. How would we lead that person to discover what that one path might be? Here's my thinking. Make it pleasing. In other words, if you want somebody to do something, make the something appealing to them. So if it's selling, if someone is naturally suited for selling, then you'll find them pursuing every opportunity to be in a persuasive, organizing, difference-making, problem-solving role. You know, they'll just be drawn toward it, whether they're in sales or not. And you'll see that in their youth. You'll see it as they mature. And you say, yeah, but what if you don't have that? Well, you can cultivate that because we all have to sell at one time or another and in one way or another. So we might as well be good at it. And some people are naturally born to it. That doesn't mean they'll be good at every aspect of selling because there's preparation, targeting the right people, connecting with them, solving their problem, getting their commitment, assuring that they're satisfied, managing sales. There's all those different dimensions. And not anybody is suited to all of those. So we have to develop our talents on some level regardless. But if you're not drawn toward sales, just know that sales is like language or math. You've got to get good enough at it to do well, period. It's not an option to not do it. Because if you don't do it, your life will stink compared to what it could have been, right?
For sure.
So find the field that appeals to you most. If it's medicine or if it's education or if it's transportation or manufacturing or whatever it happens to be, find that field and then look for the highest paid position in that field and you'll find it's a sales position.
We all have the potential to succeed. Just watch little babies. They're eager. They're excited to learn. They're thrilled when they learn. They take on challenges constantly and keep at it till they get it right. I think as we grow up in our modern culture, we start thinking, am I good at this? Will I humiliate myself? Will I look bad in the eyes of others? Will I think less of myself if I make a mistake? Or I had a setback and everyone saw it. What does that mean about me? So it's kind of a luxury to have the kind of education we have and the kind of opportunities for self-reflection, but often people turn it on themselves and limit their potential. So often we're in a fixed mindset. We think our talents and abilities are fixed and we want to validate them and prove them all the time. And other times we're in more of a growth mindset, a place of learning and development. Sometimes it is a little like flipping a switch, but more often there is a journey that we have to take to keep ourselves in more of a growth mindset. Because there are so many things in our lives, in our jobs, that trigger us into a fixed mindset. If we pride ourselves on certain abilities and they're not looking so good at the moment, or we thought we had recruited a major client and it falls through, or a long-term client decides to go elsewhere, that's a blow. And that can trigger us back into a fixed mindset. What we have to do in those situations is understand that we've fallen back into a place that limits us, a place where we judge ourselves as no good, or decide not to take on the next challenge. And what we need to do then is really cajole ourselves back into, even I tell people, talk to that person, talk to that fixed mindset persona. Say, look, I understand how you feel. I understand why you want to protect me, but let's just see, what can we learn from that setback? Let's find out why that client didn't stay with us. Let's really arm ourselves for the next success.
We understand that sales is a process, and the big thing that I see, Will, with salespeople that make mistakes, or young green salespeople, is they try to rush that process to get to that gratification of making a sale, and they fail to properly qualify the prospect. They fail to build a rapport. We've heard since we were little bitty baby salespeople that people buy from who they know, like, and trust. Well, it's knowing someone can be fairly quick. Liking someone can be fairly quick, but trust takes time. You know, I'm really, really big on habits, and the fact that we always hear it takes 21 days to establish a habit, or 60 days, or 37 days, or 46, whatever the case may be. And I always tell people that's complete garbage, because I quit smoking January 1st of 2009. If I were to have a cigarette right now, I'd have a carton before this interview was over. Then I'm going to have to lay down and let the nicotine high go away. So it's not going to take me that long to develop a habit. It takes that long to develop a good habit. But here's the problem we run into, not just as salespeople, but as entrepreneurs, managers, leaders, spouses, parents. We get these little bad habits, and they sneak up on us all the time, and we get one more added to our back, and then one more, and before long we're doing things totally different than how we were taught to do them, or we wanted to do them, and we don't notice these little creeping up bad habits. So no matter what it takes, if it's Post-it notes or whatever works for you, the thing that I will tell people is that, yes, you need to invest in yourself. Yes, you need to look at, and not just, when I talk about written goals, I'm not talking about just what are you going to do this week or this month, this quarter. What about this year, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? Take some time to rise above it and plan, but practice. I have a speech that I give that's called, if you're as good as you're going to be, life's as good as it's going to get. Now think about that. If you're as good as you're going to be at anything you do, life is as good as it's going to get. Look around you. You're in the kind of house you wear, the kind of clothes, you have the friends, you have the lifestyle. That's as good as it's going to get. So always strive to get better.
I don't think that salespeople are aware. I mean, it's very hard to do the kind of introspective work that you need to be really aware of your flaws. And there's a lot of people that talk. I mean, I love Gary Vaynerchuk, but he says, forget about your weaknesses, just focus on your strength. As an entrepreneur, that's great. If you're a visionary, you hire somebody who can execute to be that balance for you. But as an individual, your weaknesses will kill you. I mean, it doesn't work. If you have no self-discipline, saying don't worry about your lack of self-discipline, just focus on the fact that you have really high business acumen. Well, your business acumen will never help you because you never are in front of anybody because you're not disciplined enough to nurture and prospect and do these things. You've got to shore up the weaknesses, and the awareness is where it starts. And I don't think that a lot of salespeople, and I know that their companies aren't aware of all the different areas where you have to really have some high competency as a salesperson, like resourcefulness and initiative and accountability. And if they do, they have this competency model that they will have on paper for HR, but then no one will ever deal with the salesperson using that competency model. It'll be like, well, I hired them to sell. They said they knew how to sell when they got here. They should be out selling right now. That's what they should be doing, and they're not doing it. It's more complicated than that. There's a whole bunch of factors, and you have to sort of look at it. But it's the awareness that lets you say, I recognize I have a gap. And even if you don't know what that gap is, if you're out listening to podcasts, if you're reading blog posts, you're going to see something that's going to make you immediately say, wait a second, this feels like they're writing to me, or it feels like they're talking about me. I do this thing that they're saying you shouldn't be doing. And that's when salespeople start to have that mindset shift, or any people when you're going through change. It's first the awareness that something needs to be improved. And then once you start to make that shift, and I'm aware and I'm going to do something different, the results follow.
I've been doing a very intensive scientific study on self-awareness for about the last 3 years now. And one of the most common things I hear from people is exactly what you just said of, I want to be self-aware, but I'm scared. I don't want to see those ugly parts of myself. So let me start with the definition and then give a really important caveat for that. So the definition of self-awareness is really two things. Number one, knowing who I am, what I want, what's important to me sort of internally. And number two, understanding how other people see me. And there's a lot of research, I'm sure we can go into this, that those two things are not always the same information. But stepping back and just looking more broadly at self-awareness, the people who see themselves clearly, from my research, also saw themselves compassionately. So it was really interesting. They have sort of a level of humility to say, I'm not perfect, and here are the things that I'm just not great at. Here are the things I am great at, and I respect and appreciate myself anyway. So it's not sort of boundless self-esteem. It's seeing ourselves clearly and sort of loving ourselves in spite of ourselves. 95% of people think that they're self-aware, but the real figure is closer to 10 to 15%. So on a good day, my joke is 80% of us are lying to ourselves about whether we're lying to ourselves. It's sort of stunning. But what I don't want people to do is say, well, being self-aware, again, means seeing myself for all the horrible things I do. It's really just taking a step back and trying to see a little bit more clearly and looking at that as a daily journey. If I can know myself 1% better every week, just imagine the impact that that's going to have. But one thing that I've learned in my research that I find really inspiring, actually, is the fact that it's like a muscle. It's a skill that if we spend time cultivating it and working it out, so to speak, almost anybody can improve. And so what I did actually in my research, one of the main focus areas was I searched the world far and wide for people who basically didn't start out as self-aware, but were able to make these really dramatic improvements and transformations. And what we found in studying those people were some myths around self-awareness, sort of what it takes and how you don't get there. We found some roadblocks that not a lot of people see every day, but the overall message there is if we have a daily commitment to see ourselves clearly, to do the work, to be a little braver maybe than we would want to be, we just reap the benefits. And the research on this is really clear. Self-aware people are happier, they're more successful, they're more confident, they get more promotions, they're better leaders, they're better salespeople, and they actually even lead more profitable companies. So if we could just work a little bit harder every day, I think almost any of us can make a pretty dramatic improvement over time.